Hello and welcome. I'm sure most of you know that Veeam is the world's leader at data protection. But what about backing up and protecting the actual Veeam server? How do we go about doing that to make sure we protect against any hardware failures or potential database corruption? Geoff, why don't you show us in the lab exactly how to get to the configuration backup?
Yeah, Matt. I mean, as you said, this is a critically important feature, and it's easy to turn on. So you go up to the left-hand side, the hamburger menu, you press Configuration Backup, and you'll get this menu. The first thing you want to do is click Storage and make certain that you're not targeting your local disk. Because obviously, if this is protecting your VBR server and you've got this configuration backup located on that server and that server dies, you've lost your configuration backup. So in this case, we are targeting an object first bucket on the object first appliance, which is great because it's also immutable. Now, the next thing that you really need to do is to make certain that your restore points here are enough for what you need. And these backups, keep in mind, are very small. They don't take up much space. So there's no reason for you to be a little bit too much on the safe side as you might be with some big workloads and lower this number. So I would leave it at 30 myself. That's 30 days. An important thing to point out as well is that on the schedule, by default, it goes to weekdays, I believe. But you do have a choice of either every day, on weekdays, or on these days. I would prefer myself to use weekdays or even every day, depending on my workloads. And I personally, and I don't know about you, and I'll ask you about that as well, Matt, would never choose monthly to do a configuration backup.
Yeah, totally agree, Geoff. I think with the configuration backup, they're a minimally invasive backup job. You're not doing snapshots, you're not doing heavy compression or deduplication. It's very low impact to your overall workloads and infrastructure. So I'm with you, Geoff. I would run this every day, if not just on the weekdays. And you certainly want to overestimate how many of those restore points you hang on to, because you never know when a inadvertent configuration change might have ripple effects and perhaps isn't even detected for a few days later, right? So you definitely want to make sure you've got more than enough points to roll back to in the event that you do have to leverage one of these to restore from.
Definitely. And the more the better in that case. Also, I point out, very important to turn on notifications. Treat this like a normal backup job. You want to know that this is working because, as you know, in data protection, things can stop working. And the worst thing is to know or to not know that they've stopped working and to find out at the worst times when you're trying to recover. So it's easy to do. You can use SNMP if you want that, or email alert. So I would turn that on. Next, one thing I really like about this is at a glance, you can check and see last successful backup. And I'll tell you, when I was working in production, there were a couple times when I looked at this and it showed a month ago because something had gone wrong somewhere. And so I immediately saw that and changed it and fixed it. You can run them ad hoc. Let's say you've just done a big configuration change or something's happened and you want to be better safe than sorry, press backup now and that will back it up. Next, Matt, I'm going to ask you, why do you think we need to encrypt the backups?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's important to note that that checkbox is not turned on by default. It's certainly highly suggested and recommended. It is 100% a best practice to turn this on for a multitude of reasons. With ransomware on the rise and exfiltration attacks, becoming more prevalent, it's not only about having immutable backups, but it's making sure that that data, while it does live on immutable targets, is also encrypted at rest. And Geoff, you and I were talking about the ability to recover passwords during restores. Talk to us about that and that added benefit.
So what's critical to understand is if you're trying to restore an environment, if you only have like one hypervisor and a few passwords, okay, you can manually retype those in during a recovery. But if you're talking about a big data center, a big organization, you don't want to make your recovery window prolonged by hours of you manually typing in credentials for your VMware server, your Hyper-V server. And you don't have to do that because if you enable encryption on your backup configuration job, Veeam will also save your passwords, which means that when you restore your backup configuration, it's ready to go. You don't have to type anything in. You connect right away with your hypervisors or whatever workloads you need to, and the passwords are there. This is an enormous saving of time. Not to mention that I've been in restores where people have forgotten where their password is because they put it in a long time ago and they didn't rotate it. So that's another thing you want to avoid. So that's how simple this is. And why don't we move on to the next stage? What does a restore look like?
Okay, now that we've got our restore wizard launched, you'll see the two use cases that we mentioned. You've got a restore path as well as a migration path. In this video, we're going to walk through the more common restore scenario. So when we hit next here, it's going to enumerate the list of potential repositories that we can select from. And, Geoff, you wanted to talk about why are there several different repos listed here?
So the intuitive thought would be that you launch this and you immediately see the location where you backed up your configuration to. But remember, there's nothing stopping you from, and in fact, I would encourage this, of copying your configuration backup. And you can do that through file copy jobs in Veeam or just manually. And so what it's giving you is the opportunity to look around and find multiple locations. Now, obviously, if you can, you're going to go straight away to the location where you targeted your configuration backup.
That's right. Good tip. And certainly you can never have too many copies of backups, right? 321 also applies to your backup configuration file. So in this case, we've selected our repo that we previously configured. You can see that we can enumerate the configuration backup, the bucket, and then you're going to see all the different BCO files that have previously been created, which is the file extension for your Veeam backup configuration job. So we're simply going to select the first one here, hit OK. And what's really cool is when we hit analyze, Geoff, it'll go through and give us tons of parameters and different details about what is contained inside this backup config file.
Yeah, and keep in mind, folks, that BCO extension, you might say, well, what is that? It's actually an XML file, but backup configuration makes it better. And as you can see, there's a lot of information here, which is very good. I mean, look at that compression ratio right there. When I talked about previously this being a really small file, I mean, you've got a compression ratio of 24.5%. So, and you can also see there encrypted backup. And that means that we have all of our credentials in there for all of our environment.
And, one other thing I want to point out while we're right here, foreshadowing a little bit, Geoff, but you can also see our password loss protection is supported. And that is going to be absolutely critical when you enable encryption in a Veeam deployment. You want to make sure that you have Enterprise Manager deployed with password loss protection enabled. And this is essentially a backup to your initial password. So if whoever initially encrypted your backup files, let's say they left the company, God forbid something else were to happen where they're unable to share what that original password was, how do you decrypt your data? And this is a really nice tool that we're going to show you how easy that is to do. So when you hit next, after that initial process completes, it's going to ask you for that decryption password. Now, let's just say that we know the password. So let me type this in. Now, assuming you know the password, you can continue on with the next step as you see here. However, what if you don't know the password? Let's say we missed a character and we try that again. It's going to pop up with invalid password, right? So what would you do in the use case scenario where you didn't know the password? Well, notice here you've got this link, I forgot the password. Simply click this. It's very simple. You're going to copy this string. You're going to hit next. Then it's going to ask you for the response message. Well, where do you get that? This is where Enterprise Manager comes in. So if we hop over to Enterprise Manager, we log in, you're going to go under Configuration, then you're going to go under Settings, and then under Key Management. Now, as you can see here, Password Recovery, you simply click that link. It's going to ask you to paste that string that we just copied, paste that in. You hit next. It's going to say it was verified successfully. We're A-OK there. You hit next. Now it's going to give you the response. So we copy that response. We go back, paste it in here, hit next. It's going to authenticate again. Configuration key was restored successfully. And guess what? We can hit validate and move on. How easy is that? So it's super secure. You've enabled that two-step process, Geoff. I think that's an absolutely paramount thing to make sure you turn on, regardless of where you use encryption, whether it's on the backup configuration job or any other backup job for that matter.
Yeah, and Matt, the thing is, I mean, even the most, I'd say, thorough administrators, backup administrators of us all, have occasionally come to situations where, oh my goodness, where's the password? It's human. So it's a wonderful thing, but I want to point out another beautiful thing about this. It wasn't a case of the enterprise manager suddenly displaying us the password. No, if you notice, we never saw that password. It just allowed us to go forward. So it's not going to reveal the password. You're just going to get that response that you insert, and you'll be allowed into this. Obviously, after this, for your next configuration backup, you want to create a new password and go forward knowing your password. But that's a wonderful thing for you to have. As you said, it's not just for the configuration backup, it's anything that you've encrypted. That is your insurance policy.
Yeah, absolutely, Geoff. And you can see here that it's giving you the instance name, the database name, and your authentication method to select during the recovery. You simply hit connect, and it's going to give you a few final options, whether or not you want to recover the backup and replica catalog, the session history, or if you want to have it to take a backup of the existing database before you actually initiate the restore. Geoff, there's probably some scenarios where you may want to disable some of these though, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at this, the natural question is, well, why are you giving me these choices? And I'll give you an example. So let's say you've lost your backup server, but you have this and you've installed a fresh VBR server. Well, in that case, there's no need to back up the existing database because it's empty. So that's one thing. Now, when it comes to the difference between session history and backup and replica catalog, I seem to remember in my backup administrating history that there was a case where I was dealing with a very large environment. And I believe for speed purposes or just to have things cleaner, I didn't restore the session history because all I wanted was the backup and replica catalog. I think by default, you should probably leave everything. But keep in mind that they've given you those choices for a reason, and you might need to use them. That's the wonderful thing about Veeam is they go granular because they know that sometimes you need to cut things down to get things done either quickly or just the bare minimum.
Yeah, absolutely, Geoff. Giving customers flexibility is really the key here. And as you can see from this video, it's a real short and sweet process to configure your backup configuration job, have it successfully be encrypted at rest, which is absolutely a best practice for all your backup jobs to turn on encryption. And also we showed you how easy it is if you were to lose the password to actually go through and still decrypt that data in the event that you need it, which is a very, very important part when you go through the process of enabling encryption with Veeam, is to turn on password loss prevention. So stay tuned as we dive deeper into all things Veeam and Object First.